Welcome students, welcome to lecture number 35 where we will be continuing with module number 5 under subject financial management. So as we know, module number 5 is working capital management where we have already seen the theory part relating to working capital. Today we will be covering the part on the right hand side, that is determination and estimation of operating cycle and cash cycle, where we will be covering theory as well as problems. So as I've already told, today we will be covering determination of operating cycle and determination of cash cycle. Now let us understand what is this cycle, what is this operating and cash conversion cycle. So first let us understand this. Okay. Now students, in any business, in any enterprise, okay, when it wants to sell goods, it has to purchase raw materials. Suppose in case of manufacturing industry, it has to purchase raw materials. So you can see here, first thing that the business needs to purchase is raw materials in order to make sales, correct, for a manufacturing industry. So here first raw materials have to be purchased, but purchases of raw materials can happen only when there is cash involved. So only when there is cash involved, the raw materials can be purchased by an enterprise. Then when the processing is done on the raw materials, see, raw materials is not directly sold to the customers, right? Some processing has to be done. It has to be converted. The raw materials has to be converted from its form to a new form. So raw materials will be converted and then into work in progress. Then that will be converted into finished goods. So up to from cash to finished goods, what cycle have we seen? First, the enterprise requires cash to purchase the raw materials. Then it purchases the raw materials. It does the processing on the raw materials. It tries to convert the raw material into finished goods. During that process, there is a work in progress. That is where the raw materials are processed half. There is no, when the raw materials are processed but the entire process is not completed, it is in between, so that is work in progress. When the work is completed, it becomes finished goods. Now what happens, this finished goods is sold by an enterprise to the customers, and that is called as sales. So when this finished goods are sold to the customers, it is sales. Now, we know that sales can be of two types. One is cash sales and credit sales. Suppose if it is a cash sales, then this account receivable will not come into picture. This sales will directly go to the cycle of cash. Like the sales will be succeeded by cash if there is a cash sales. Like suppose on the counter, if you're selling or finished goods on cash, then you will immediately receive the cash. So this account receivable will not come into picture. But suppose if the sales is made as on credit, that is it is a credit sales. So in case of credit sales, what happens? Account receivable will come into picture. Now account receivable are nothing but debtors or bills receivable. So debtors are those persons, okay, to whom the sale is made on credit, and those persons are liable to pay cash to us. Okay, since we have made the sales to them on credit, debtors are persons from whom we have to receive the cash. So suppose if the sales are made on credit, then account receivable will come into picture. That is nothing but debtors or bills receivable. That is the amount of which we have to receive at a later period. And then when we receive the amount, what happens? That is, we receive the cash. Once the business enterprise gets cash, with the cash again it will purchase the raw materials. It will do the processing on that. Then when the processing is completed, it becomes the finished goods. Again the sales take place. When the sales takes place on credit, they are the debtors or accounts receivable. Then when the debtors make the payment of cash, again the raw materials are purchased. So this complete cycle is called as operating and cash conversion cycle. So what is this cycle? This cycle is interrelated to each other. That is, see students, if you have cash, then only you can purchase raw materials. If you have raw materials, then only work in progress will come into picture. If your goods are half completed, then only finished goods can take place. And if you have goods, then only you can make sales. Suppose if you are making credit sales, then only debtors will come into picture or account receivable will come into picture. When they are debtors, you know you will be receiving cash. So this is the entire operating or cash conversion cycle. So this is the operating cycle. That is, this is the process in which the raw materials are getting converted into work in progress, into finished goods. Finished goods are getting sold. Then debtors are coming into picture. Again, you're receiving cash from the debtors, and so on. So this process, this is a complete cycle which keeps on going in every enterprise. Okay, which keeps on, you know, happening in every enterprise. So is this clear, students? Is operating and cash conversion cycle, is this cycle clear to everyone? Yes? Yes, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now let us understand the meaning of operating and cash cycle. I've already explained, but still we will just read and go through it. The time limit for completion of the cycle is, how much is the time limit? The process of conversion of raw materials into finished goods, after finished goods, then the sale of goods, after sale of goods, realization of sale proceeds, and receipt of cash is termed as operating and cash conversion cycle or working capital cycle. So this operating and cash cycle is also called as working capital cycle. So, this operating cycle of a company determines the requirement of working capital. So, this entire cycle will tell you how much is the amount of working capital required. So, just one more point I will add, that is, what is the time required for the raw materials to convert into work in progress? What is the time period for work in progress to get converted into finished goods? And what is the time required for the goods to be sold? What is the time period for the goods which are sold on the credit to the debtors? What is the credit period allowed to the debtors? And what is the time period that the debtors will pay the cash again? And the cash to be again, what is the time period for the cash to be converted again to the raw materials? So this entire time period which is involved, okay, this entire thing is also called as working capital cycle. Now let us determine how to determine the operating and cash cycle. So let us know how to calculate. Now we are actually practically going to see that how is this operating and cash cycle determined. It is always determined in number of days, students. Like how many days will it take for the raw material to get converted into finished goods, work in progress, finished goods, sales, debtors and cash. So how many days is required to complete the cycle? So we are going to understand how to determine the operating and cash cycle. Look at the left hand side, students. Operating cycle, it is also called as gross operating cycle. Like in this cycle, what are the days that you're going to calculate? The total days involved is in purchase of raw material. So in purchasing the raw material, how many days do you require? Number one. Number two, how many days are required to convert the raw material into work in progress? Number three, how many days are required or involved to convert the work in progress into finished goods? Number four, how many days are involved in the sale of finished goods and conversion into accounts receivable? And number five, how many days are involved in realizing the accounts receivable? Okay, that is the sales proceeds. So in this entire cycle, in this entire operating cycle, you are going to calculate the number of days required or involved in converting the raw materials up to which stage? Up to the receiving the cash. So what are the days involved? When you calculate the number of days, just add up all the days, you will get the operating cycle in number of days. Now what is cash cycle? Also called as net operating cycle or cash conversion cycle. See students, cash cycle is this operating cycle is a gross operating cycle. Cash cycle is a net operating cycle, which is cash conversion cycle. Now, how do you calculate this cash cycle? It is gross operating cycle minus credit deferral period. cash cycle is nothing but gross operating cycle, which is nothing but your operating cycle, that is all these number of days minus credit deferral period. Now, what is credit deferral period? Students, when you purchase the raw materials in the first stage, you can purchase it on credit, right? You can purchase the raw materials on credit. That is a credit availed. Correct. So it is gross operating cycle minus your credit period which you are receiving when you're going to purchase the raw materials. So that becomes your cash cycle. So again, I'm repeating operating cycle determination. There is a different process, and cash cycle determination is different process. For operating cycle, what number of days are involved for your raw materials to get converted into cash, like the entire process, how many days are required? When you add up all the days, you get your operating cycle. Now from your operating cycle, when you minus the credit deferral period, credit deferral is when you minus your credit availed, like when you suppose raw materials you're purchasing on credit, if your supplier is giving you raw materials on credit, when you minus that period, you get cash conversion cycle. Now, is this determination of operating and cash cycle clear to everyone? Yes, students? Yes? Is this cycle clear to everyone? How do you calculate operating cycle and how do you calculate cash cycle? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Next. Next, what
Yes,
is the thing
ma'am.
is, okay. Next, what is the thing is, let us put whatever I've explained, let us put in the formula, okay? Like if I have to derive a formula from the explanation that I've given, let us see how it is. Now we will see for operating cycle, which is also called as gross operating cycle, and we will see cash cycle, which is also called as net operating cycle. So let us see the formula. ICP plus DCP. So ICP is inventory conversion period plus your debtor conversion period. Now in inventory conversion period, what will come? Raw material plus your work in progress plus your finished goods. And debtor conversion period is once your sales is made. How much time does will the debtors require to pay? We have sold the goods on credit, so how much time do the debtors require to make the payment of cash? So operating cycle is ICP plus DCP. So let me just see here from ICP, that is operating cycle, students, as I've told you, it is raw materials plus work in progress plus finished goods, and from sales to cash it becomes debtor conversion period, that is how much time period is required to complete for the debtors to make the payment of cash. So operating cycle, if we put in the format of formula, it will be inventory conversion period plus debtors conversion period. So it is ICP plus DCP, where ICP stands for inventory conversion period. Conversion means number of time period required to convert the raw material into finished goods. And when I say DCP, that is debtors conversion period. Obviously, debtors will come into picture when the sales are made. Correct? Now, debtors conversion period means time period required for debtors to make payment of cash. So this is how the formula is. Next is cash conversion period. Now cash cycle, as we know, is nothing but the gross operating cycle. That is the complete from the raw materials to the cash, the complete process is called as the operating cycle. So you can take GOC, that is gross operating cycle, minus CCP, that is creditors conversion period. Now I told you, when we purchase the raw materials on credit, we are the creditors since we have to make the payment of cash. So it will be minus creditors conversion period. So again I'm repeating, cash cycle is nothing but gross operating cycle minus creditors conversion period. So now, is this formula understood by all? Based on the theory, is the formula clear to everyone? Yes? Yes, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So again, I'm repeating, gross operating cycle is ICP plus DCP and cash cycle is GOC minus CCP. Now, let us see, students. Inventory conversion period. what all inventories are included in this, that is raw materials are included, work in progress is included, and finished goods is included. Now how to calculate this inventory conversion period? So now individually I will be telling you all the formula for calculation of each of the type of inventory. So under inventory conversion period, the first one is raw material conversion period. Now, how do you calculate raw material conversion period? See, conversion period is again the time limit required to convert the raw material into work in progress. So the formula is average stock of raw materials divided by average cost of production per day, or either you can use average cost of production per day or average cost of raw material consumed or cost of goods sold. So depending upon the information given in the problem, okay, you can select the denominator from either of the three. So again, I'm repeating raw material conversion period. How will you calculate this? You will take average stock of raw material divided by average cost of production per day, or average cost of raw material consumed, or cost of goods sold. So depending upon the information, suppose information of RM consumed is given, you will take the denominator as RM consumed. If information about all the three is given, so you will take the denominator as average cost of production per day. Okay, next, work in progress conversion period. How will you find this? And everything is in number of days, students. Means conversion period means the number of days required for converting the work in progress to finished goods. So work in progress conversion period, it will be average work in progress inventory divided by average cost of production per day. Okay. Next, finished goods conversion period. The formula is average stock of finished goods divided by average cost of goods sold per day, or average cost of sold sales. That is, finished goods conversion period will tell you the time period involved in converting the finished goods into sales. So this is inventory conversion period. For any problem, first you individually solve all these three. Get the, suppose if raw material conversion period is 5 days, work in progress conversion period is suppose 4 days, and finished good conversion period is 2 days. So total this up, 5 plus 4 9, 9 plus 2 11. So total inventory conversion period is 11 days. So it takes 11 days for converting the raw material into finished goods. This was just an example what I give you. So this is the formula. Next, how do you calculate debtors conversion period? So debtors conversion period is one component from gross operating cycle, because gross operating cycle, what is the formula, students? It is ICP plus DCP. We know how to calculate ICP. Now let us see how to calculate DCP, that is debtors collection period. Okay, average book debtors. This is average book debts divided by average credit sales per day. Students, denominator, how will you remember? See, debtors come into picture only when there are credit sales. So you have to do the formula is very simple. Debtors divided by credit sales. It will give you debtors collection period or debtors conversion period. Whatever answer you get in number of days, suppose debtors collection period is suppose 2 days. Now ICP was in an example what you have taken, it was 11 days. 11 days plus 2 days, it becomes 13 days. So 13 days is your gross operating cycle. So complete the entire cycle you require 13 days. Next, net operating cycle, what you have to do, take the gross operating cycle, that is 13 days, minus the creditors conversion period, you can say, or creditors payment period. Okay. So creditors payment period is average creditors divided by average credit sales. See, students, creditors come into picture only when you have made purchases on credit. Therefore, the formula is very simple. Creditors divided by credit purchases. Now, suppose if you require 3 days. Okay, suppose if the creditor's payment period is 3 days. So what will be the net operating cycle? 13 days, which was a gross operating cycle, minus 3 days. So the net operating cycle is 10 days. So this was just the formulas to calculate the respective period. How do you calculate the respective periods? Is this clear to everyone, students? Yes, students? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have seen gross operating cycle. The formula is ICP plus DCP. We have seen how to calculate ICP. We have seen how to calculate DCP. Then we see net operating cycle, which is also called as cash cycle, where we saw we are going to take the gross operating cycle or operating cycle answer, and to that answer we are going to minus the creditors payment period, and we have seen how to calculate creditors payment period. Everything is going to be number of days, because this cycle is going to tell the number of days required to complete the entire working capital cycle. So now let us see sums on operating cycle and cash cycle. Is the screen visible to everyone? Is this Word document visible to everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
student? Okay. Now let us start, students. From the following data, compute the duration of operating cycle for each of the 2 years. So they're given year one. First, we have to compute for year one, and on the same basis and the same lines, we have to compute for year two. Okay. So they are asking you operating cycle. Now, what is the formula for operating cycle, students? ICP plus DCP. Now, operate ICP plus DCP. They have not told you gross operating cycle or net operating cycle. Just told operating cycle. So if we solve the net operating cycle, it will be ICP plus DCP minus CPP, that is creditors payment period. Okay. Now, first we know in order to calculate ICP, we require three things: raw materials, work in progress, finished goods. That is raw material conversion period, work in progress conversion period, and finished goods conversion period. So first I'm just going to do year one, and on the same basis you have to do for year two. Okay. What is the stock of raw materials? 20,000. So first what we'll do individually, first we'll go to calculate step by step. So solution calculation of operating cycle for year one. So first we require raw material conversion period. What is the formula, students? Average stock of raw materials divided by average cost of raw material consumed. Okay. So what is the stock of raw material given? 20,000. You have written numerator 20,000 divided by average stock of raw material consumed. See, first, is the information about production given? No. Is the information of cost of goods sold given? It is given, but it is the third information. See here, just a second. Hey students, you have to go in this order. Okay, average cost of production per day is not given, so then you will see for average cost of raw material consumed. See students, you will consume that much raw materials how much you have purchased, right? So how much purchases you have made, that is the raw material that you're going to consume. So this purchases is nothing but raw material consumed if it is not separately given. So 96,000 is the cost of raw material consumed. So see here students, 20,000 divided by 96,000 into, since we are going to calculate in number of days, they have told us assume 360 days for each year. So into 360, therefore you get operating cycle, that is 75. So raw material conversion period is 75 days. Next we have to do is work in progress conversion period. Work in progress conversion period formula is average work in progress inventory divided by average cost of production. Now, average cost of production is not given, therefore we take cost of goods sold as average cost of production. So, work in progress inventory is given as 14,000 here divided by average cost of production, that is 1,40,000, because obviously how much production is taken place, that many goods will be sold. So 1,40,000 into 360. So it is 36 days. Next is finished goods conversion period. So it is average cost stock of finished goods divided by average cost of goods sold. So what is average stock of finished goods? It is given here is 21,000 divided by cost of goods sold is given as 1,40,000. So when you divide this two into 360, you get 54. Now you have got ICP. ICP means you have got the raw material conversion period, work in progress conversion period, and finished goods conversion period. Now to ICP you have to add DCP. DCP is debtors conversion period, which is nothing but debtors divided by credit sales, because debtors come into picture only when there are sales. Now, have they given you the total sales is 1,60,000? Have they given you out of 1,60,000 what is the cash sales and what is the credit sales? No, this information is not given. In the absence of information, you will consider the entire sales to be credit sales. Since separately cash sales and credit sales figure is not given, in the absence of such information, you will take the entire sales as credit sales. So you will take 32,000 divided by 1,60,000. See, 32,000 divided by 1,60,000 into 360, that is 72 days. From this gross operating cycle, when you minus the creditor's payment period, you will get the net operating cycle. See, again, I'm repeating, they have just asked, telling you to compute the duration of operating cycle. They did not tell you that calculate gross operating cycle or net operating cycle. Therefore, you're going to do the entire process up to net operating cycle. So next step is you have to minus the creditor's payment period. Now creditors payment period, what is the formula? It is creditors divided. When does creditors come into picture? When there is credit purchases. Okay. So is the information about cash purchases or credit purchases given? In the absence of information, you have to consider and assume the entire purchases to be credit purchases. Therefore, you have to do 16,000 divided by 96,000 into 360. So you have done 16,000 divided by 96,000 into 360. You have got the answer as 60 days. Now since it has to be minused, it is written in bracket 360. Sorry, in the bracket 60. Therefore your net operating cycle is 177 days. Is this clear to everyone? Is this solving of year 1 clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Only what only what you have to
Yes,
do
ma'am.
is very good. Only what you have to do is ICP plus DCP minus CPP. Okay, that is raw materials, work in progress, finished goods, debtors. All you add and minus it with the creditors payment period, you will get your operating cycle answer. Okay, whatever we have solved for year 1, on the same basis, students, you have to solve for year 2. Okay, on the same lines, there is no difference. On the same lines, only the figures will change. Only you have to do year 2 figures, but rest the entire solving will be as per year 1. Can we move ahead to problem number 2? Yes, students. Yes, students. Can we move ahead to problem number 2? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Go
Now,
ahead.
Z Limited has provided the following data. Sales is given as 500 lakhs and cost of goods sold is given 360 lakhs. Inventory at the beginning is given 60. At the end of the year, it is given 64. Account receivable at the beginning 80. Account receivable is what? Your debtors. Okay. Accounts payable is what? Your creditors. This you already know. Very
Creditor.
good. So beginning of the month, end of the month is end of the year is given. Beginning of the year, end of the year is given. Now they are asking you what is the length of operating and cash cycle. Assume 360 days in a year. Now they are asking you separately calculate operating cycle and cash cycle. So what is the formula for operating cycle? ICP plus DCP, and cash cycle is operating cycle minus CPP. Okay. Now how do you calculate operating cycle? Inventory conversion period plus debtors conversion period. Now, in this particular problem, separately they have not given you raw material, work in progress, finished goods. So do not go to calculate separately. Directly they have clubbed and given you the entire inventory. So what will the formula is, as you all know, it is average stock of inventory divided by cost of goods sold. Correct? Now, how do you take an average, students? Average is nothing but amount at the beginning of the year plus amount at the end of the year divided by 2. This is how you take an average. Okay. So first we'll see for the average stock of raw materials, opening stock plus closing stock divided by 2. So 60 plus 64 divided by 2, you get 62. So you take average stock of inventory as 62 divided by cost of goods sold. Now what is the cost of goods sold? 360. So 360 into 360, because since we have to calculate the number of the cycle in days, therefore you have to multiply with the days, that is 360 days in a year, 62. Next is debtors conversion period. What is the formula? Very simple. Debtors divided by sales. Okay. So what is the debtors? Debtors is given here is average debtors. So you have to take opening debtors plus closing debtors divided by 2. So opening plus closing. See here, you can see the working. Opening debtors plus closing debtors divided by 2. So 80 plus 88 divided by 2, you get it as 84. So 84 is your debtors divided by average credit sales per day. Now sales is given, students, 500. Sales is given as 500. Okay. So if no information about cash and credit sales is separately not given, you take the entire sales as credit sales into 360, you got 60. So you got the gross operating cycle as 122 days minus creditors payment period. Creditors payment period, what is the formula? Is very simple. Average creditors divided by average purchases. Now, is the information about purchases given in the problem, students? No, but we can find out the amount of purchases by using a formula. See here. Cost of goods sold is nothing. What is the formula for cost of goods sold? Opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. Is everyone aware of this formula? This we have done in first semester, students.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So cost of goods sold is equals to opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. Cost of goods sold is given in the problem 360. Opening stock also, opening inventory is given in the problem 60. Closing inventory is given 64 in the problem. Purchases we have to find out. Purchases answer we got as 364. Since no information is given that all the purchases are credit purchases or cash purchases, you assume the entire purchases to be credit purchases. So 43 divided by 364 into 360, you get 43 days as creditors payment period. This you're going to write it in bracket because you want to minus it. So from your gross operating cycle, that is 122 days, when you minus 43 days, you get 79 days as your net operating cycle, which is also called a cash cycle. Is this clear to everyone, students? See, so based on the information given in the problem, you have to use your workings accordingly, students. You cannot sit searching for raw material conversion period or WIP conversion period or finished goods conversion period. You have to use your brains, and accordingly, what the information given in the problem, you have to use it. And inventory is nothing but stock, students. Other name for inventory is stock. Is this problem clear to everyone? Yes, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We move ahead to a last problem on this conversion, on this operating cycle and cash cycle. This is a problem from question paper 2017. Okay, so let us solve this problem. What they're telling, from the following information extracted from the books of manufacturing concern, compute operating cycle in days. Okay, the period covered is 365 days. So now you have to multiply everything with 365 days. Okay, that number of days, whether it is 360, 365, they will mention in the problem. Next, average period of credit allowed by supplier is 16 days. Okay, that is credit allowed by suppliers is 16 days. Average of total debtors outstanding is 480 days. Raw material consumed is 4,400. Total production cost is 10,000. Total cost of goods sold for the year is 10,500. Sales is given as 16,000. Okay. Value of average stock maintained. Raw materials is 330, WIP 350, and work in progress is, sorry, finished goods is 260. So they're telling you calculate operating cycle. Now, students, what do you mean by this? Can you tell me what is this average period of credit allowed by supplier? What is this, the other name for this? Can you give me a name for this? What is the meaning of this? Credit allowed by suppliers. It is creditors payment period. That is, what is the period for payment given by the creditors? It is a creditors payment period is 16 days. See, when we are purchasing the goods on credit, okay, so supplier will give us some credit period, right? That credit period is directly given as 16 days. So this is creditors payment period, which is directly given as 16 days. So what we have to calculate operating cycle. They are not asking us for gross or net. So we have to calculate the complete operating cycle. For that, what we have to do, first we have to find out raw material conversion period, then WIP conversion period, then finished goods conversion period. To that, we have to add debtors conversion period and minus creditors payment period. Then we get the operating cycle in days. So let us calculate. First, raw materials conversion period is also called as holding period, or one and the same. So average stock of raw material divided by average cost of raw material consumed. The details of it is already given in the problem, that is 320 divided by 4400 into 365, because 365 period covered is given in the problem. Next, work in progress holding period is nothing but average work in progress divided by average cost of production. This is already given in the problem. Just substitute it and you will get 13 days. Finished goods holding period is nothing but cost of stock of finished goods divided by cost of goods sold, which is also given in the problem. You will get it as 9 days. Next, creditors collection period is nothing but debtors collection period is debtors divided by credit sales. Now, sales, they have not mentioned it as credit or cash. Dear students, they have not mentioned whether it is credit or cash. So the entire sales, you will consider it as credit sales. You get 16,000. So when you add all these days, you get it as 60 days will be your gross operating cycle. But they're not asking you gross or net. They're asking you just operating cycle. So you have to solve it completely. So less creditors payment period. Creditors payment period, what is the formula? Creditors divided by credit purchases. Now this is directly given in the problem. 16 days is already, see students, directly given in the problem, 16 days. So you need not calculate. You know that 16 days is a period given. So directly you will write minus 16. You get the net operating cycle as 44 days. Is this problem clear to everyone? Yes, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Suppose students, I change the sentence. Average period of credit allowed to customers 16 days. Then what would this mean? Average period of credit allowed to customers, if it would be, then what would 16 days stand for? Yes. Suppose if I make change in this particular problem stating as average period of credit allowed to the customers, then what would 16 days stand for? Would it stand for inventory conversion period, or would it stand for debtors conversion period?
Debtors conversion period.
Very good. So first you have to identify whether some information in the formula is already given in the problem. Then you have to solve it accordingly. Is this clear, students? Is this some clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So by this we have finished the part on how to determine the operating cycle and how to determine the cash cycle. If it is separately asked in the exam, then solve separately. If nothing, of just they have told okay, calculate the operating cycle, then do it completely from the taking from the raw materials up to the creditors payment period, solve completely. Okay, so we have understood how to determine the operating cycle and cash cycle. So thank you so much, students. We are done for this session.